India-US relations are already in a very challenging phase, to say the least. So I cannot see our relations with the US, even if we manage to get a trade deal in the aftermath of our reduced purchases of Russian oil, that this will mean that India-US relations will can just go back to where they were before this these sanctions were put on India, and also the kind of outreach which has been made to Pakistan by President Trump at a time when India-Pakistan relations themselves are under so much tension.
So even if Trump gets his way and India is forced to cut back on purchases of Russian oil, this imposing of sanctions will be another pressure point on the relationship, another detracting factor.
It already is. It already is. So for people to think that somehow, with a trade deal and with this oil issue behind us now, relations can go back to where they were before, I do not believe that is going to be the case.
So basically, we have to grit our teeth, grin and bear it.
Well, I don't know whether we will, but certainly I would hope that India stands up for its interests.
So grit our teeth, grin and bear it.
And prevail.
And prevail.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.
Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. President Trump seems convinced Prime Minister Modi has told him that India will either stop buying Russian oil completely or cut back very substantially. On the other hand, India denies saying anything of the sort. So where do things stand on this critical issue? But now, will US sanctions settle the matter in Trump's favor? And what impact would that have on the prospects of any trade deal that India and the United States hope to sign? Finally, beyond all of this, how do we explain and understand President Trump's attitude to India? Those are the key issues I shall raise today with India's former Foreign Secretary and former Chairman of the National Security Advisory Board, Shyam Saran. Mr. Saran, at least on 5 separate occasions, President Trump has claimed that Prime Minister Modi has told him that India will either stop buying Russian oil completely or cut back very substantially. In fact, when he phoned to wish Modi happy Diwali, the two sides put out very different accounts of what they discussed. Trump claimed Russian oil was discussed. Modi was silent about that. What do you make of all of this?
Number one, Karan, I don't think that it would have been politic for the Prime Minister to convey to Trump in any manner that India is going to cut back on its oil imports from Russia, particularly because you have a very major visit by President Putin to take place to India in December. In the present geopolitical situation, it is Russia which appears to be a more reliable and predictable partner than the United States of America is. But as you have pointed out, that the recent sanctions which have been put on Lukoil and I think one other, Rosneft of Russia. These sanctions will probably compel India to reduce oil purchases from Russia, particularly if secondary sanctions are also announced. By the way, secondary sanctions have not yet been announced. But I think it would be perhaps wise to expect that those secondary sanctions will also kick in some time later, which means that those Indian companies which are dependent upon the US financial system, the US capital market, like Reliance, for example, will probably find it difficult to continue buying oil from Russia. With respect to our state-owned oil companies, I think they can continue buying oil from Russia through intermediaries as they have been for quite some time. So that will probably continue as far as I can see. But yes, as far as the major oil companies in India are concerned, these sanctions will mean that they will have no option but to reduce their imports from Russia.
So, in a nutshell, what Trump failed to do through his tariffs, he's now much more able and successful to do through sanctions. The major Indian private companies, Niara Oil and Reliance, will be surely cutting back on the purchase of Russian oil.
I cannot see what the alternative is. Particularly, as I mentioned, that secondary sanctions are likely to follow, or it would be prudent on our part to prepare for those sanctions to kick in as well.
Now, as you know, India's position up till now has been that it will buy oil from whichever source makes economic and presumably also strategic sense. But now, if US sanctions force India to stop buying Russian oil, what impact will this have on Indo-US relations? After all, India's hand will have been forced by American sanctions.
Well, India-US relations are already in a very challenging phase, to say the least. So I cannot see our relations with the US, even if we manage to get a trade deal in the aftermath of our reduced purchases of Russian oil, that this will mean that India-US relations will can just go back to where they were before these sanctions were put on India, and also the kind of outreach which has been made to Pakistan by President Trump at a time when India-Pakistan relations themselves are under so much tension.
So even if Trump gets his way and India is forced to cut back on purchases of Russian oil, this imposing of sanctions will be another pressure point on the relationship, another detracting factor.
It already is. It already is. So for people to think that somehow, with a trade deal and with this oil issue behind us now, relations can go back to where they were before, I do not believe that is going to be the case.
Now, there is a view that the Prime Minister decided not to attend the ASEAN summit because he didn't want an uncomfortable meeting with the American president. Earlier, he declined the invitation to Sharm el-Sheikh, possibly for the same reason. In the circumstances, was he wise to avoid a face-to-face meeting with President Trump, or was it a mistake to do so? Might he have been able to prevail had he met him face-to-face?
No, I don't think it would have been wise of him to go to Kuala Lumpur and not being able to avoid a meeting with President Trump. There is no need for the Indian Prime Minister to be a kind of a prop in a spectacle choreographed by President Trump. I mean, that is what he keeps doing all the time. Why should we be a prop in that? So I can fully understand the reasons why the Prime Minister of India would not have gone to Kuala Lumpur and have avoided a meeting with President Trump.
Do you think President Trump would have sensed that the reason why Mr. Modi is not going to Kuala Lumpur, the reason why earlier he didn't accept the invitation to Sharm el-Sheikh is because he wants to avoid meeting Trump face to face? Do you think that's been sensed by the Americans and by Trump
Oh,
in particular?
I can't see how they could come to another conclusion. Surely, I mean, it is quite apparent that in the manner in which he has been behaving over the last several weeks, the kind of prudence, as I said, on the part of the Prime Minister of India is I think fully understandable.
Against this background, Shyam Saran, let's widen our discussion and talk about the trade deal that India and America are negotiating. Do you accept, or do you at least incline to the view that it's unlikely to happen while the dispute over Russian oil continues? Is that, in a sense, the key stumbling block? Or have the US sanctions, which will force India to cut back on purchases of Russian oil, resolve that block?
I believe that the inability to arrive at a trade deal actually points to a larger geopolitical challenge. This is not about trade, and this I have said to you before as well. This is about changed geopolitics. And what I was trying to point out earlier also, and I'm convinced that that is the case, that the Indo-Pacific strategy, which was a central kind of a node of US global strategy, that particular strategy has now diminished in importance for the United States. And if that has diminished, India's position and India's importance to the United States of America has also diminished as a result. Therefore, the kind of accommodating or even what Ashley Tellis used to call about strategic altruism, that does not exist anymore.
So, in a nutshell, the problem is that Trump doesn't consider India as important a partner as his predecessors used to consider. Indeed, even as he considered India in his first term.
Himself in Trump 1.0. Quite right. So there is a changed geopolitical context, and as sooner we understand that, the better we would be able to cope with the changed circumstances.
This also suggests that for the foreseeable future, while Trump remains president of America, and that is the next 3 years, India's importance will remain diminished, and the problems that we're experiencing are likely to continue in some shape and form.
That's what my expectation would be.
Then let me put you something that Mint has written about and something that the Economic Times has echoed. They believe that a trade deal could happen sometime in the foreseeable near future with tariffs in the range of 15-16%. And today's Business Standard is suggesting that officials who are not named have said that the deal is negotiated at their level. It's only the language that's being tidied up. Now the political heads have to agree to it. How do you respond to those sort of reports?
So, Karan, there had been reports earlier that there were at least 2 occasions where actually a deal was reached among the officials at the official level. Even at the level of Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, the deal which was reached had been approved. It was shot down by Trump himself. He said, not good enough, go back and get some more concessions. There was a second round, I believe, where also some further concessions may have been made by the Indian side. I'm not aware about the details. And it was the second time that he shot it down saying, not good enough. So even if at the level of the officials, even at the level of the cabinet secretary level, that is the US cabinet secretary level, a deal is again reached, what Trump's reaction to that would be is still a very big question mark if you keep this previous record in mind.
When we're talking specifically about the deal, is it in fact the wider problem that you mentioned a moment ago, that India is not as important in Trump's eyes as it used to be, that is the sticking point? Or is it that Trump is determined to get concessions from India in terms of American exports of corn and soybean, as well as dairy products?
Well, I'm not privy to what may have been the specific issues on which the trade deal has been held up. But I would again repeat that as far as Trump is concerned, the overall strategic importance of India is not large enough for him to consider making a kind of accommodating deal, as may have been possible in the past and as may have been the expectation of India in the early stages of the Trump administration. And there is a personal pique element involved as well, which is that he keeps repeating that, he avoided a war between India and Pakistan. India keeps saying that United States of America and President Trump had no role to play in that respect. And for a person like Trump, who has a very inflated ego, this is something that he is not able to stomach.
So hopes, or maybe I should use the term dreams, that our tariff levels could fall from the present 25%. I'm not talking about the penalty for buying Russian oil. It could fall from the present 25% to something closer to 15, 16, or even Pakistani levels of 19 may just remain hopes and dreams.
Oh, well, at the moment, we have no indication that a trade deal is imminent. Even just, I think, yesterday or day before, the Commerce Minister was in Berlin for a Berlin International Conference where he was interviewed. And in that, he did say that we are negotiating. We are maybe close to a deal. But, maybe if the tariffs continue, we will just have to adjust to those tariffs and diversify our trade. That's not the kind of language which suggests that a deal is imminent. And secondly, Karan, I want to also again reiterate that even if tomorrow we are able to get a trade deal, which we believe is in consonance with India's interests, India-US relations are not the same as what they were a few months back. There is a change geopolitical context, and that is likely to continue, trade deal or no trade deal.
So the commitment that the two sides made to each other when Prime Minister Modi visited Washington in February, that we would have a trade deal agreed to, at least the first tranche of it agreed to by the fall of this year, that commitment almost certainly will be missed.
Oh, yes, it has already been missed. We are already in autumn.
And there's very little chance of that trade deal happening even before the end of the year. There are only 2 months left before 2025 itself gives way.
True, except that perhaps, the Russian oil issue may become somewhat of a non-issue, and maybe therefore it might make it more easy to perhaps reach a trade deal. But frankly speaking, I have been not very much focused on whether we are going to get a trade deal or not going to get a trade deal. I would also say that we should, of course, welcome any kind of respite that we are able to get if we manage to get a trade deal. But it would be prudent on our part to already begin a process of diversification of our trade relations as soon as we can.
In other words, we should begin the process of finding other partners we can export to, because the American market is going to remain challenging, if not partially closed to us, for a while to come.
Yes, and also the longer we are closed off from the American market, the ground situation would change. I mean, the clients in the United States of America will have already started looking for alternatives for other suppliers. And so when you make those kind of changes, it is not so easy to just go back to square one, even if the tariff situation improves.
Let's at this point, Shyam Saran, widen our discussion one more time. When I last interviewed you, you said Trump is being vindictive. He clearly has it in for India. That definitely wasn't the case during his first tenure. Beyond the fact that he no longer thinks India is that important, how do you explain this change in attitude? Because it's possible to diminish the importance of India and not become vindictive. He's become vindictive as well.
Well, that vindictiveness part is, as I mentioned, also because of personal pique. And as you have seen time and again, he has an inflated ego. He wants, leaders to pay obeisance to him, to recognize that he is in some way, sense, a kind of a top leader whose word is law. So when he is, in a sense, confronted by a contrary kind of a view or a contrary statement, he does not react very well to that. So part of it is, I think, a personal peak. The personal element plays a more important role today than perhaps in the past. But there is also a geopolitical context, which is heightened by this personal peak. And that geopolitical element is really the change that we are seeing from Trump 1.0, from Biden. There was a certain consistency as far as the Indo-Pacific strategy was concerned. In fact, the Indo-Pacific strategy was enunciated in Trump 1.0 and was continued under Biden. If you look at the situation today, he's talking about, hemispheric security. He's talking about the priority being, fighting against domestic enemies. He's telling his armed forces personnel that, you must have training in how to deal with, domestic enemies. So there is an important shift which is taking place. Europe, as you have seen, has been completely sidelined, is a marginal to the way he looks at his global strategy. And as far as the Indo-Pacific strategy is concerned, I think it is already undergoing a major change. And if tomorrow, when he meets Xi Jinping, some kind of an understanding is reached with China, then that will mean that there will be even less importance attached to the Indo-Pacific strategy. Already Taiwan is feeling the brunt of sanctions, but at the same time, there is a greater, skepticism about the U.S. Willingness to defend Taiwan if there is an invasion by China of Taiwan. You had the Australian Prime Minister recently visit the White House, in which they did talk about AUKUS. And yes, it is true that Trump, in some sense, reaffirmed the commitment to AUKUS, but there was not one single mention of the Quad in this visit. So the Quad, which was supposed to be in some sense a linchpin of US Indo-Pacific strategy, seems to have fallen by the wayside. Nobody is talking today about the summit which was supposed to be held in India before the end of the year, and a possible visit by Trump to India. That seems to be off the cards at this point of time. So there is a big change which is taking place. And that change, I think, should be acknowledged, and we should really revise the manner in which we are going to deal with a rather different kind of world.
Let me then ask you, as a former foreign secretary, how concerned should India be at the diminishment of Quad, the fact that it's not being talked about, the fact that that's very likely the Quad summit is not going to happen this year, and who knows when it'll happen next year? And how worried should India be about the fact that Trump's entire attitude to the Indo-Pacific is so different to Biden or even to what it used to be in his first term? How worrying is all of this for India?
This is a major shift. And frankly speaking, I had not expected that there would be such a major shift. Because after all, as I mentioned, the Indo-Pacific strategy was enunciated during Trump 1.0. Even the revival of Quad took place under Trump 1.0. So from there to where we are now finding ourselves, actually, it has been a very major shift. Look at what he's talking about in terms of, hemispheric security. Not that the Western Hemisphere would not be important for the United States, but the manner in which he's sort of putting it right at the top of his agenda, along with the domestic agenda, is something new. So we may laugh when he says Canada should become the 51st state of the United States, or, we would like to purchase Greenland, or he is going now after Maduro in Venezuela. I mean, there is now a explicitly stated aim of a regime change in Venezuela. You look at what he's doing with Brazil, 50% tariff on Brazil as well. At a time when the MAGA crowd is saying, you must look at America first, he is trying to bail out Milei in Argentina because ideologically he is close. and he is trying to, open the door for Argentinian beef to be imported into US, and his own MAGA crowd is objecting to that. So there is a certain method in this madness, however bizarre it may seem, but we have to take that into account.
If Trump, who's meeting Xi Jinping tomorrow or day after in Seoul, were to come to some sort of understanding, and he's never hidden the fact that he believes he has a great relationship with Xi Jinping, if they were to come to some understanding, and that changes the very character and nature of America's relationship with China, again, how much of a concern is that for us? Because for us, China remains a major threat, and American support was always important.
Well, I think it would be a major point of concern, because so far a assumption has been there for the last at least 25 years that the confrontation between China and the US is structural in nature, that it is unlikely to change. That you have a superpower, you have an aspiring superpower. The competition between them, the confrontation between them is something which is inherent, and we have seen that in history as well. So we have been able to sort of fashion our foreign policy around that particular assumption. Now, even if there is a tactical shift in that respect, and I do think that the structural confrontation will probably continue between the US and China, but tactical shifts could take place. And if tactical shifts take place, they also will have an impact on how India, for example, relates to China, how India relates to the rest of Asia, because it has been an article of faith with us that there cannot be a hegemonism of one power in Asia. If there is a certain kind of a even tactical concession of Chinese dominance in Asia by the United States of America, that would be a matter of great worry for us.
The other big change between his two tenures is Trump's attitude to Pakistan. You alluded to it yourself a moment ago. In 2017, Trump accused Pakistan of lies and deceit. Now he seems to be enamored of Field Marshal Asim Munir and Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. Is he really interested in Pakistani oil and rare earths, which is what the Pakistanis seem to be offering him, or is there some other explanation?
Well, one is that, the personal element is very important here, because when the Indians denied him a role in India-Pakistan conflict resolution, Pakistan very happily gave him all the credit. Not only gave him all the credit, but gave him what he really wanted, which is a nomination for the for the Nobel Prize, which was India kept completely silent about it. So that alone explains quite a great deal in terms of the new kind of bonhomie that you see, particularly with the new the field marshal in Pakistan. But this is new, and I don't think we should just dismiss it as something which is really just for the cameras. It is not really important. There is a shift in US position with regard to Pakistan, and the fact that Pakistan was not only he was invited to the Sharm el Sheikh conference. The fact that Shahbaz Sharif was asked to speak, all that shows that there is a renewed interest in Pakistan. Now, could it be because there is a renewed interest now in getting back Bagram in Afghanistan? Who knows? Is it because he believes that it is useful at this stage to also keep India somewhat off balance at a time when he's trying to extract concessions from India? That could also be the case. Even if it is for tactical reasons that the US is making those moves, it has consequences for India. So we are today, I believe, in a somewhat more challenging situation than we have been for quite some time.
In which case, let me ask you, would you agree that this is the lowest point in Indo-US relations since, how should I put it, Clinton's visit to the country in March 2000?
Well, the 25-year upward trajectory of India-US relations has certainly plateaued, if not started declining.
So this is a very low point in the last 25 years.
Yeah, how can anybody deny that?
Then let me end.
By the way, also reinforcing that is the fact that the position of Indian Americans in the United States is also changing. I have friends in the US who are, Indian American friends who are feeling very, very insecure. They are feeling fearful. So, from a model minority community, it has now become a target. So we should not also underestimate the importance of these kind of deeper changes that are taking place.
Is this feeling that Indian Americans have a result of MAGA racism?
Oh, the MAGA racism is a very important, element of it. But it is being reflected in the kind of targeting which you are saying take place, even by the administration. So the H-1B visas, for example, or the deportations of Indians from the United States, the greater scrutiny of Indian visa seekers, the fact that there has been a 25% to 30% drop, or perhaps even more, of Indian students wanting to go to American universities. In addition to the political difficulties that we are facing with the US administration, there is at this level also there are changes taking place.
And those changes with regard to H-1B visas, with regard to the extent to which students can stay in the country and whether their visas will be extended after 4 years of study, those are in fact reflections perhaps of the fact that Indians are not that welcome any longer.
I cannot see how one can deny that conclusion.
So in addition,
there's a whole, as I said, the whole environment is undergoing a change, and it's difficult to see, even if we say, as I mentioned, if tomorrow say we get a good trade deal with the United States of America. Maybe the atmosphere in the relationship may improve. Maybe it becomes possible for Trump and Prime Minister Modi to meet again on some occasion. What do we say about these other changes that are taking place? They cannot be switched on and off like that. So there is a deeper shift taking place that we have not seen for at least for the last 25 years.
So then,
or perhaps even more.
So then I take it your feeling is that even during the remaining 3 years of the Trump presidency, this relationship is unlikely to stabilize. What's more likely is for further deterioration.
Well, it may not deteriorate. I mean, it has already deteriorated quite a bit. So I don't know how further we would be going. But I would say that we would be able to perhaps settle at a lower equilibrium than the potential of Indo-US relations. We cannot go back to square one. There is no square one left.
Have we, as a country, handled this adequately and properly, or do you have qualms about our response?
No, we have to be mindful of the fact that it is not only us who have been finding it very difficult to deal with this unpredictability, this uncertainty, very mercurial nature of this leader. So you can't really say that we have been perhaps not as adept at dealing with him as perhaps others have. I think I have pointed out before also that maybe somebody would have said, submit to some of this bullying. Why don't you cater to his, ego and give him the kind of, obeisance that he's looking for? Why worry so much about it? My point has been that when you are dealing with somebody who's really a bully, the more you give in, the more will be demanded of you. So there may be some pain that you would have to, perhaps suffer in standing up to this, but in a sense that prevents you from suffering much greater pain down the road. So I think in not being overtly hostile to the United States or being critical of Trump, by just holding our red line to our red lines, that is perhaps been the right approach, I would say.
I hear what you're saying, but in contrast, Starmer bent the knee and Britain has ended up with 10% tariffs, the lowest of any country in the world. Pakistan has pandered to his ego. They've got just 19% tariffs and a relationship that is significantly improved compared to what it was under Biden. India, on the other hand, has stood by, I suppose, its belief that we're not going to pander, we won't be bullied, we'll stand by our interests, but we're in a very real sense the losers too.
Again, repeat what I said. Of course, there is a loss to be suffered, but it is a dynamic situation. I am arguing that the loss that you suffer by standing up for your interest today, in fact, avoids you are paying a much greater price in the future. And it is also my belief that, India was much weaker, say, in the 60s or the 70s. Much weaker than it is today, much less capable in economic terms or military terms than it is today. And yet, we were able to stand up for our interests to the extent that we were able to stand up alone when we believed that our national interests were involved. Take, for example, the Non-Proliferation Treaty. We refused to sign it, despite the fact that there was so much huge pressure on us. In retrospect, did not that decision prove to be the right decision? So I think I have perhaps lived through an age of diplomacy where we were proud to stand for our interests despite the pressures which we were facing, despite the fact that we had much less capabilities than we have today. I see no reason why we should actually abandon that position.
Except that there was a Kennedy in Washington who came to our assistance when China attacked us. There was a Kennedy who was understanding of India and wanted a good relationship with Nehru. We have Trump now, which is very different.
True. I mean, I grant that there is a difference, but it was not that we took a certain position safeguarding our interests only because we were very certain that we have a benign U.S. president sitting in Washington. I don't think that was the calculation.
So basically, we have to grit our teeth, grin and bear it.
Well, I don't know whether we will, but certainly I would hope that India stands up for its interests.
So grit our teeth, grin and bear it,
and prevail.
and prevail. Shyam Saran, thank you very much for the time you've given me. Thank you for your insights and understanding of the relationship between India and America. I'm deeply grateful. Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.